everybody, I'm Jeremy,
And I'm Wendy.
and we are Elevation Games. And today we are going to be reviewing My Father's Work. If you've been watching our channel recently, you may have seen us do complete playthroughs on this guy. One of them was 5+ hours.
It was a really long day, but that was the first time that we played, so there was a pretty big learning curve.
There was, for sure, but this is
This is not a game to play on your lunch break.
Yes. It's going to be long every time you play it.
Yeah.
We'll get into this in the review. I think it's actually brilliantly simple in a lot of ways, despite appearing very, very heavyweight. But this came out. This was designed by T.C. Petty. It came out this year. We grabbed this at Gen Con, actually.
That's right.
Published by Renegade Studios.
Mm-hmm.
We got in a line at the Renegade booth, and were lucky enough to grab one of these guys before they were gone. In My Father's Work, you are playing a mad scientist.
So fun.
Yeah, it is one of the more unique themes that I have seen in a board game in a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Truly. It also doesn't take itself too seriously. It's somewhere between young Frankenstein and Mary Shelley.
That's such a great comparison, Jeremy.
It is definitely not all the way young Frankenstein, but it does poke fun at itself in several places. So
That's right.
You're actually playing 3 generations of mad scientists in My Father's Work.
Indeed.
Thus the name of the game. You are always picking up your father's work from the previous generation. The game is played over 3 rounds. Early, middle, and late life for each member of this family. And you're actually all playing brothers and sisters in Generation 1 and then cousins in later generations.
Yeah.
It's very explicit about that as you're going through the story. It's really neat. Competing basically to be the best scientist, but also to complete whatever your great father's opus was. So you can pick those at the start of the game. You can also draw them randomly, but the game comes with about 8 of these, I think.
Yeah.
And you've got things like construct a time machine, or
Love potion.
you of course have the creature in there as one. There's
Lycanthropy.
yes, lycanthropy, immortality.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one to play too.
Yeah, all kinds of the kind of stuff you would expect, really. But the way the game works is it's basically a worker placement game. So get this big giant box out of the way here.
This game is really big.
Yes. It takes up a lot of table space, for sure.
Yeah.
You basically have your starter board here that is your mansion. You have your little figurine that represents you. Actually, it's the hexagon one here.
That's right.
One that represents your spouse and one that represents your servant.
Or your groundskeeper.
Or your groundskeeper. Which is important because you can get other workers, other servants. However, servants can go into town and take actions for you. Your groundskeeper cannot because they are too hideous to be seen in the town. Your groundskeeper can perform tasks in your mansion itself, but as can your servants, but your servants run the risk of being driven insane if they see too much in your mansion.
Well, you are asking them to do some pretty heinous stuff, so...
Yes.
It's always a risk that it's going to be just a little too much for them.
Yes. And basically what you are doing throughout this game is gathering resources, again, by worker placement either in your mansion or in the village. And the game comes with this lovely village chronicle that shows you different time periods and different villages based on the story you're playing through. So you flip through this guy, and the options available to you are different depending on which story you're playing in, what the time period is, and so you can on your turn basically you're taking your people and putting them somewhere to take an action, either in the village or in one of the rooms on your mansion. Generally speaking, these actions get you resources. And again, one of the places this game really shines is the components.
Yes. So if you look at our unboxing video, you'll see we were just truly giddy and excited over these components. There is so much thought and design that goes into them. They're great. They're heavy. They have a nice hand feel, and they're very well constructed. So you can see I've got an elephant here in my hand, a horse. So these are the animals that you purchase at the farmer's market, and you unfortunately use these animals for experimentation. But it's always good experimentation where no animals are harmed, in my mind. You also have a cemetery where you will go dig up bodies, and they're represented by a coffin. And just like a sign of the design of this game, you could have one coffin design to use throughout, and that would be fine. No one would think anything about it. But there's 4 different coffin designs inside the game. So it's just like all of the design elements in this are so expertly done. There was so much thought put into this. And that's just like one of dozens of examples where that kind of thought was put in.
Yeah, the attention to detail is really stunning.
It truly is.
Of course, one of the things that this game got known for is the chemical component here. So you get these little jars. These are actually little glass jars with a cork in them.
Don't put the little cubes that you get to represent science down in those, because it's really hard to get out. It looks really pretty, but then they're very hard to get out. Do as I say, not as I learned the hard way at Gen Con.
But the point here is, so we do have some upgraded components.
Yes.
We have metal tokens. You get little gears, little cogs. Those are metal as well. And again, that attention to detail. It's not one cog that you have a bunch of. It's bunch of different little cogs in there.
And they're this lovely copper color.
Yeah.
It has a nice sound when you have them in your hand, or when you're placing a bunch of them down at the same time. So I just pulled out a random assortment and got 3. I pulled out 4, and I got 2 different versions of the gears in here.
Yeah. Yep. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is obviously the base game I believe has cardboard coins and cardboard cogs.
Sure.
But a lot of these things, it still has these, right? Even if you buy the base game, you're still getting these jars.
That's nice.
You're still getting these cool little wooden animals and coffins and stuff, right? So, and
I didn't realize that. That's great.
Yeah. And so even the base game itself still has that attention to detail, and the components are really nice. Now, I would happily... we didn't have a choice. There was only one version of the game we could buy. But this is one of those situations where I would happily recommend getting that upgrade. These are really some of the nicest components I have ever seen in a game.
Sure.
Period.
But they come at a cost. I mean, I feel like we do have to say that, though.
They do. They absolutely do. But another thing that you're going to get, even in the base game, is these little figures that represent your different characters in the game. And, again, attention to detail and thoughtfulness, they tell you in the instruction booklet, yes, you have your stereotypical little mad scientist guy here. This doesn't have to be you. You can use any figure to represent your self token, or your spouse token, or your groundskeeper token. It's completely up to you.
Yeah, it is fun to mix and match. One thing about the minis, and there's 30, I think there's 30 minis in the game. So there's a whole lot to choose from. There's 6 different varieties of, or 6 different like versions of the characters. There are 2 females in this, and that's usually who I choose to be my main player, and then also my spouse, because they're both just great. One is mixing up a little scientific concoction, and the other one is holding a medical bag. So there is the thought put into, you can have a female be the doctor or be the scientist in here, and for the time period I feel like that's a little unheard of. But in game design, it's something that you don't see as often as you could. So I appreciate that, and those are the characters I usually choose, and then I let all of my groundskeepers be the male character. So I have a man holding a shovel. I feel like he is the perfect groundskeeper because he has a shovel, so he can go maintain your gardens with all of your herbs for your potions.
And dig up those bodies.
And you know what? If needed, he can handle a body or a carcass.
So yes, really, really nice components. Again, as you're playing this game, you're going to be going around. You're going to be putting these nice meeples on various places, and getting some of these lovely components. What do you spend those components on? Well, you use them to complete experiments. You have 3 levels of experiment: A level, B level, and C level. And you have to have a certain number of the lower level one before you can perform the higher level ones. So typically speaking, you gather those components and then you spend them to perform an experiment. For instance, I have obedience training here. It's going to cost me 1 animal token to perform it.
Okay.
And then you get knowledge. Most of your A level, your lowest level experiments, that's what they reward you with, is your little knowledge cubes. And your knowledge is tracked along 4 different tracks. You've got chemistry in blue, biology in green, engineering in yellow, and occult in black. Mm-hmm. And so as you acquire that knowledge, you are then spending it, for one thing, to do some of the higher level experiments. So in order to do a B level experiment, you have to already have completed at least 1 A level experiment. Mm-hmm. And then it's going to cost you some components. For instance, right here I have human to animal skin grafting.
Nice.
It's going to cost an animal, a body, and 2 biology knowledge. So I would have to spend all of that to complete the experiment. You'll usually get some sort of a reward down here. And then, of course, you've completed the experiment. And then again, as you go up, the C level, the highest level experiments, you have to do one of these, you have to have done 1 A and 2 Bs before you can even attempt a C.
Correct.
So you're building on these over time to represent more and more advanced experiments, gaining more knowledge over generations. And then, of course, by the time you get to your masterwork, you have to have completed 1 A, 2 Bs, and 3 Cs to even do this at all.
Plus all of the extra requirements that you have. So I've got 2 chemistry, 2 biology, 2 occults on mine, plus 2 elements. So
yeah,
your masterwork is not something that you can complete in the first round.
Yeah, I in theory, I suppose you could. I don't see how it would be possible. Because again, one of the things that you're doing over time here, an action you can always take is to send someone down here to your study to record knowledge. And so if you have, say, 2 biology cubes, knowledge cubes that you've gained, then you can take your little marker here, spend one of those cubes, and move this over by 1. And this is permanent. So typically when you transition from one generation to the next, you lose everything. All of the resources you've got collected, all of the money, all of the knowledge cubes that you've gained, those are gone. Any upgrades you've made to your mansion stay, and any knowledge that you've recorded in your journal here carries over. So typically speaking, you're going to spend those first couple of generations really trying to fill up these tracks so that in future generations it costs you less knowledge to do some of those more advanced experiments. This is kind of, it's a nice little engine builder here. Reminds me a little bit of building up in Splinter or something like that over time.
Right.
But again, speaking of really nice components, I mentioned those mansion upgrades. You've got a really, really nice board here. As you're upgrading the mansion, you purchase these and you just slot them in to these little spots. They've even taken attention to detail again here, giving you a little space there for you to easily take these in and out. Again, just really, really incredible attention to detail.
A lot of thoughtful design in this. The fact that it's easy to pop those in and out. The fact that your little miniature holder has a hole so that you can easily pop them in and out. I'm sure that all of these extra pieces cost money and delayed the design. But from a player perspective, it just really elevates the playing experience for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as you're going through these rounds and proceeding across the generations, a couple things you have to worry about. Some of these experiments are a little gnarly.
You don't say.
And they can cause you to go slightly insane.
I mean, was that called human to animal skin crafting?
Yes.
I mean...
and so you've got a sanity track down here. And as you go along this, you're going to trigger some negative side effects, including compulsions. And these are little sort of extra victory condition things that you can fulfill.
Right.
So it's typically tells you, okay, well, you have to go get an animal, or you have to go get a chemical, whether you need one or not. You just have a compulsion to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you complete them, you'll get a victory point. Sometimes they're a little more interesting, such as you have to get rid of your spouse, move them to lost, and get some victory points. Essentially murdering your spouse or one of the servants. Those are usually worth a few more victory points. But when you get to the end of the generation, for every 2 of these that you're holding that you haven't fulfilled, you get a negative, a maladjustment that carries on to the next generation. And these are always bad. And your character for that entire generation is just stuck with whatever this is.
So read that one. Give us an example.
Existential crisis. If you end the generation on space 6 or higher on the insanity track, lose 5 victory points.
Woof.
Yeah.
Woof.
So an interesting wrinkle there. The other thing that tends to happen with these, and your sanity track can trigger these as well. Sorry, I'm knocking over your pieces.
That's
okay. You also have a creepiness track up here. It represents how creepy the villagers find you. And so you'll move that little pitchfork over to the left as the villagers get less and less tolerant of your bizarre behavior. And your little creepy token will move to the right. If those two ever cross, you have angered the villagers to such a degree that you can no longer go into town and take actions until you reduce your creepiness. The main way to do that is, while you can no longer go into town, you're always welcome in church. And so you can go make an appearance at church and pay to have that creepiness bumped down.
Sure. I feel like I wish that that Disney would let us put in that clip from Shrek where he's like, grab your pitchforks and torches.
It's very thematic. It's a neat touch, like a lot of this game.
Yeah.
If you can't tell, we really like this game.
We do really, really like this game. We've played it 3 times now?
Yeah, I think so. And we have played the same scenario every time. So, in addition to all of this that you get in this box, you also get 3 of these little boxes. These are the scenarios that the game comes with. And they just sort of add some flavor as you're playing through the game. So they basically add a theme. The one we've played 3 times now is A Time of War. It's a branching story depending on decisions you make. It can end in a few different ways. And it adjusts both the village, what the village looks like, the actions that are available to you there. There's a lot of flavor text and stuff.
Sure.
I should mention, we've gotten this far without mentioning, this is an app-assisted game. So you do have to download an app. The app primarily is giving you that flavor text, the story as you go along.
It also is really neat because when you're in the app, there are times where it will say, hand this to the player with the most victory points or the least victory points, or hand this to the first player. And that player makes choices inside the app that no one else is allowed to see. And it doesn't tell you, it gives no indication in the gameplay of what you chose. So the first time we played this, Daniel had made a choice to blow up the workers' union. Like, he put a bomb in there. And so 2 rounds later, it blew up. We had no idea. We thought it was just part of the story. We were like, that's wild. And until the end of the game, when we were wrapping up, he told us that actually he was the one that had done that. And it was a choice that he had made inside the app while we were playing. And I think that adds to the ability of the game to just be different every single time you play.
Yeah, it's really nice. It adds a lot of flavor. I know people have mixed feelings about app-assisted games.
Yes.
I think this one does a really good job with it. The game itself, I think, stands on its own even without that. It's fun.
Completely co-sign.
But the app just adds that extra bit of flavor and story to it that really, really makes it sing.
The story is to me, one of the best parts of the game. So I really like games that have a good, strong theme, that have a really heavy story component in them. So when I read reviews of this game and people are like, oh, this game, you could play it so much faster if you didn't hear the story. I'm like, but why would you play this game if you didn't want to include the story? Because to me, that's one of the best parts. But it definitely does extend the playtime of this game. This is a solid 3-hour play.
Yeah, there's a lot of reading.
A lot of reading.
It is narrated partially. Some of the sections are narrated, but a lot of it isn't. And so whoever you choose to be the person running the app for the game is going to be sitting there with their phone reading quite a lot of text over the course of it.
It also chews through the battery of your phone too, so you want to make sure you've got a charger handy, because your phone, unless you're sitting at 100% when you start playing, your phone is really going to be driving the struggle bus as you near the end of the game, because it does require a lot of battery power to run the app.
Yeah. It's a Unity app. They seem to do that. I don't know why. There's nothing super demanding in that thing, but like we said, I think the app works really well. You punch into it which one of these you're using when you start the game. and it adjusts based on that. And there's, again, it can end in multiple different ways. Each one of these little boxes comes with their own set of cards, extra experiments that get mixed in as you're playing that scenario, extra components that, when you first look at these, you have no idea what these do.
We still have no idea what most of those do, and we've played this 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was going with this. It's like this. We've played through this scenario 3 times, and there are components in here we still have never used.
We've never seen them.
There are cards in here. There's a whole set of cards in here that are part of a Utopian project. We've never seen that. Don't know how to get to it.
Nope.
So there really is a lot more variety than you would expect contained in these 3 little boxes.
Indeed. And that's nice because when we first got this game, and this game is one of the more expensive games that we own, and we understand we got a deluxe version. I think that added about $50 to the cost of the game. But again, it was expensive. So if it was something that we were going to play 1 time, 2 time, 3 times, when I see there's 3 scenarios in here, I'm like, cool, we'll get 3 plays out of this. They better be great. What I see instead is that the game builds on itself and is different. We've played it 3 times so far, like we keep saying, and it's been different. The scenarios have been different. The situations have been different. You see a little bit of overlap, but not nearly as much as I expected to see. And so that to me makes me feel a lot better about the investment that we've made in this game, because it does require, $100+ to buy the game, and then a big time investment as well to play it. The first time we played it, it took 6 hours. And we had a lot of breaks built in during that time. But 6 hours sitting at a table is a lot of time. There's a lot of things. There's an opportunity cost that comes from sitting at our game table for 6 hours, but it was worth it. And the first time we played with Jeremy's brother Daniel. So we were playing with 3 people. The second time we played, it was just the 2 of us. And so I was interested to see what the replayability looked like. Just playing the same scenario for a second time. And then when we saw how different it was, I was curious how much of that was due to the design of the game and how much of that was due to going from 3 players to 2 players. So then when we played it the third time, again with just the 2 of us, and had a completely different playing experience that we had the previous 2 times, it really just kind of hit home how much thought was put into this game so that you can keep playing it over and over and over. And it seems like as we're playing, we're unlocking different pieces inside the game. So it gets a little bigger every single time we play too, which is a really neat design. I mean, you would think at this point we would have already been tempted to open up another box. And I'll say this too, I am a person who really loves spoilers. I love spoilers. I will read the last chapter of a book just to know how it ends, and then will still be as excited reading through it as someone who's not a weirdo that has to have those spoilers. So, it's something that I always feel like I need to know the end or as much about something as I can. I was scrolling through social media earlier today, and someone was posting one of the other 2 boxes out of this game, and I just shut down social media immediately and was like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know anything about it, because I want to leave that element of surprise in there, and that's not something that I normally do. Like, that's not my MO at all. And so I'm really excited about this game, and it's designed so well, and we will be putting a lot more time and a lot more hours into this game. So it was really expensive, but if you look at that cost per hour, cost per play, it really does break that down and make it really one of the best economical investments we have on our game shelf, maybe behind Gloomhaven.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would agree with that. And another thing I really want to stress too, this looks overwhelming. You sit down at this, and we all know we have those people who we can play Brass Birmingham with, right? And there's the people who you can't, who need something a lot simpler. um, this looks like it would be for that Brass Birmingham type player.
Yeah.
It's not. There is going to be a learning hurdle at the front, but one, it's not as steep as you expect it to be.
No.
And two, it's incredibly intuitive. This game is a masterclass in theme matching design because everything that you're doing makes logical sense as to a thing that you could do in that situation with that piece or character or whatever. And so, despite it looking very complicated, it's a lot easier to learn, and once you get in there, the actual gameplay is really elegantly simple in a lot of ways.
It's so true. It's so true. Like, it took a round or two for us really to find our legs under this, but it is, like Jeremy said, just so intuitive as you're playing, and the iconography on it makes sense. You see everything just kind of builds on itself, and so the game also has a really good flow that comes from that as well.
Yeah. We're raving about this game, if you can't tell.
We think it's terrible.
This is my favorite game that we have gotten this year, full stop.
Without question.
Yeah.
Without question.
It is up there on my all-time list, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is, if someone came to me and said, like, hey, I want to get just, like, one game that's a little heavier than Ticket to Ride, say, something that we can just sit down and play, spend hours on. This is the game I would send everybody to. It's so fun. And again, it's replayable. So this is something that you can get hours and hours and hours of entertainment out of.
I think about this game when we're not playing it.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. And what's funny is we set this up to do the review and we're not going to play it. And both of us are like a little mad about that.
Yes, I can always tell when a game has me when I'm thinking about it later and thinking about, okay, what's my strategy going to be next time? How am I going to do things differently next time?
Whose team am I going to be on the next time?
Right. So this comes with our highest recommendation, absolutely. I think it is a game that could be for just about anyone.
Yeah.
If you can get them over that initial hurdle. It's worth it.
When you start looking at the rules, or when someone's doing that initial explain to you how to play, it can seem a little overwhelming. Trust us when we say it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Like, the rule book, you would think on a game this big, the rule book would be just gigantic. But it's really not even that big, and it's full of some of the most beautiful art I've seen in a rule book, too. So it's really easy to understand, and you can tell when you're reading the rule book that the designers of this game, like Jeremy said earlier, don't take themselves too seriously. You'll see a lot of puns in there. You'll see jokes coming along that just really make this game a lot more enjoyable, even as you're just reading the rule book. You can see it's kind of like talking to a friend who's explaining this to you without being too technical, because I can't stand to read a rule book. They drive me nuts. But the rule book on this one, as I flip through it and I'm looking at how they're explaining how to play this, it doesn't make me not want to play the game which is what normally happens when I'm reading a rule book. I'm like, this seems hard. Splendor, I don't know if I'll ever get it. But in this one, you can see where they're already pulling you into that story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something pretty special. It is definitely an investment in both time and money.
Yes, and shelf space, because the game is really big.
Yeah. So I don't say this lightly. I get why this would be intimidating on multiple levels.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely worth it. It is worth every penny. It is worth the effort to get into.
Yeah.
It will be one of your favorite gaming experiences that you could have this year, probably.
Absolutely. And we've played it at 2 players and at 3 players, and it's really fun at both of those levels. We have yet to play it with 4, but I feel like there's so much thought put into the design of this game that even playing with 2 players, playing with 4 players, that you have that same balance, and that it's equally fun, no matter how many folks you're playing with.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really nice work, everyone who worked on this. Truly, really impressive job.
This is, I think, the most impressive game I've seen since Gloomhaven, from a design perspective and from just a thoughtfulness perspective. And this was a lot easier to learn how to play than Gloomhaven.
True.
And we have a couple playthroughs on our YouTube channel. So if you're curious how this plays, sit down and watch one of those playthroughs, even if you just watch the beginning, so you can see how easy it is and how fast everybody picked it up, and then how the first round took a really long time. The first time we played, like that first generation, it was just like, we're gonna be here all night. I'm gonna have to make second dinner. Like, this is gonna take a long time. But then once we got through that initial slog of the first time playing something and truly coming into it blind, because there weren't playthrough videos that we could find online then.
No.
So we had to just go straight from the rule book with no reference of someone else. But once that first round was over, you could see it immediately speed up and go in. We played the second 2 generations in the time that it took us to play the first one.
I feel a little bad recommending this. I don't know how available it is still at this point. But get on the waiting list if you can, if they have one.
That's right. Talk to your local game shop and tell them to talk to their distributors and stock up as soon as they can, because this is a great game. This would be a great holiday gift if it's in stores by holiday time season.
Yeah. And I think it will be. It was fulfilling from Kickstarter when we got this at Gen Con, and that's been 3 weeks ago now. So it's probably going to be getting more available pretty soon. Sure. So keep an eye out. This is definitely one to look for.
Cannot recommend it enough. We both really love this. I feel like we're just like giddy over talking about it.
It's worth it.
It totally is.
If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel. We've got lots more reviews like this coming, playthroughs,
right,
stuff like that. And stay in the loop for the games that we're working on, and we'll be releasing hopefully soon.
You can visit our website, elevation.games, for updates on the games that we have designed and what's coming up on our YouTube channel.
Yeah. And stay tuned here for more of this.
See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.